Every other year, the NFL sees a defense come along that some believe could be among the all-time greats. Going back through the last decade alone, there were the 2015 Broncos, the 2013 Seahawks, the 2011 Texans, the 2009 Jets, and the 2007 Steelers. All of them were legendary defenses that showed up in odd years, and all of them carried their teams to the playoffs. 2017 is no exception because the Jacksonville Jaguars defense looks to be building one hell of a legend in its own right. Their secondary is suffocating, their linebackers are fast and aggressive, and their pass rush is currently on pace to shatter almost every sack record in the books. This is as complete a defense as you will ever see in the NFL, and the Colts found that out the hard way last Sunday when they were shut out for the first time since 1993. That's 5 years before Peyton Manning was even drafted, by the way. In this 27-0 shutout, the Jags recorded 10 total sacks for the second time this season, and I want to go through every one of those sacks to show the variety and versatility of this Jacksonville pass rush. For starters, they've got 4 guys in that defensive line that can all win in one-on-one situations. I showed Yannick Ngakoue dominating off the edge a couple episodes ago when I highlighted the Packers' offensive line, and of course we've seen over the years what Malik Jackson and Calais Campbell can do when they're given one-on-ones as well, but in Week 7 it was Dante Fowler's turn to shine. He's had a slower start to his career than most expected as a former top 3 pick in the draft, but it's finally starting to look like he's putting it all together. He had 2 really good sacks in this game, the first of which was winning cleanly on a tight end with a push-pull move, but I want to break down his second sack in a little bit more detail. He's one-on-one with right tackle Joe Haeg here, and pay close attention to Haeg's technique. He's using the same hug technique that the Packers use, which I broke down extensively 2 weeks ago. He's flashing that punch early to bait out Fowler's hands, and then he pulls his own hands wide and tries to get up into Fowler's shoulder pads. So what does Fowler do to counter that? Well, the only thing he can, and that's get under Haeg's chest and use leverage and power to just run right through his ribcage. If you're an offensive tackle that's intentionally conceding your chest and your leverage to a pass rusher, then you better land that punch and you better be able to anchor down even without that leverage advantage. Clearly Haeg did not have the strength to do that here. Fowler just has way too much power for him to handle. And as a quick side note, this is a great example of something that a lot of the comments in that Packers episode pointed out. Technique is technique and anyone can learn how to do it, but it still takes incredible strength and discipline to pull it off. Green Bay is not the only team that uses the hug technique. In fact, I'd venture to say that the majority of teams in the NFL use it in some capacity, but the Packers are still the best at using it, and that's what really matters in the end. Dante Fowler was more physically equipped to defeat the hug technique than Joe Haeg was to use the hug technique, and it resulted in a free sack. Now, beyond just rushing 4 guys and trusting them to win, the Jaguars are also excellent blitzers and very well coached when it comes to running stunts, twists, and other games like that. There was a sack late in the second half that really showed off that discipline and the patience to run a proper stunt. Jacksonville is showing a 5-man pressure here with cover 1 on the back end, and that means man coverage across the board with a single high safety. But this blitzing linebacker here, Myles Jack, isn't actually blitzing. He's just showing blitz over the center to keep him occupied in protection. Post-snap, you can see him take a few steps forward like he's rushing to keep that center's attention, and then he drops out. Switching to the end zone angle here, we can see the reason why the Jags wanted to keep that center occupied with the threat of the blitz. Calais Campbell and Yannick Ngakoue are running a TE stunt over the left side. TE meaning tackle to end stunt. The tackle, Campbell, is supposed to penetrate hard into the B gap to get the guard's shoulders turned away from the A gap, after which the end, Ngakoue, will loop around into that free A gap. If the guard is focused on trying to slow down Campbell's penetration and he's turned away from that gap, then theoretically Ngakoue will slip right through it unblocked. And since the center was occupied for a few critical moments by the threat of the blitzing linebacker off the snap, that should slow him down just enough for Ngakoue to get free, which is exactly what happens. He bursts through that A gap like a bat out of hell and gets the sack. Here's where the well-coached part comes into play though. He gets a full 3 yards into the backfield before he stops and makes his move. He's making sure that the left tackle is committed to him, but more importantly, he's making sure that the left guard is committed to Campbell. A mistake that a lot of pass rushers make when they stunt is that they just immediately loop into their gap before the rush can even develop, so they get nothing out of it. On this snap, if Ngakoue just immediately started looping around to his left without even taking a single step forward, the left tackle, Anthony Costanzo, would have recognized that stunt immediately. He would have moved to double team Campbell while calling out loop 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 to the guard would then slide over to pick up Ngakoue and possibly negate the entire rush. Now, whether or not Campbell and Ngakoue could have still defeated those blocks one-on-one anyway is another story, but they sure as hell wouldn't have been given a free, wide-open lane in that scenario. Ngakoue's patience baited the offensive line into a position where they had no shot of stopping him, and that's why this stunt worked. It wasn't just the play call and the play design, it was the discipline in its execution that got the job done. Third quarter now, and we've got another great blitz call with even better execution. This one might actually be my favorite sack of the whole day. Jacksonville's in a double under look here. Some call it overload, some call it weak slam. I call it double under because you've got both defensive tackles lined up on the weak side of the formation, essentially making both of them into under tackles. But anyway, the Colts have to slide protection left to account for all three of these rushers lining up on one side. They have no choice but to take them on 4-on-3 because Campbell especially cannot have a one-on-one on 3rd and 15. And we've already seen today what Fowler can do with a one-on-one as well. Protecting with 3-on-3 is not an option here at all. As a side note, this protection is called 2-jet protection, by the way. It's a 6-man protection with a 4-man slide to the weak side, while the running back and strong side tackle handle anything off the strong side edge. Here's what makes this blitz and the protection interesting though. The Jags are dropping Fowler into coverage instead of rushing, and they're bringing a blitz called a fire twist from the strong side. Just like that last sack I showed you, they bait the protection with one look and then exploit it with another. Haig is doing his job at right tackle, but the protection is sliding away from him. He has to mirror Ngakoue when he slants inside because he has nobody to pass him off to because everyone is sliding left. Anything coming off that edge is the running back's responsibility, but there are 2 bodies coming off that edge. So now you've got 3 rushers total against 2 protectors on the right side, while you've got just 2 rushers against 4 protectors on the left side. The math is all screwed up for the Colts, and that's how this blitz was designed. Bait out that 2-jet protection call from the double under alignment, and then hit them from the other side. All of that being said though, this pressure was still beatable if Jacoby Brissett was seeing the field properly. You can see his tight end Jack Doyle recognize the blitz and ready himself for the throw as the hot receiver, but Brissett never even saw it. He never saw the blitz, so he never threw hot, so Doyle never even had a chance to try to make a play in space and get the first down. Now, Telvin Smith was bearing down on him from the beginning because covering the hot receiver is his responsibility, sure, but Doyle at least still had a shot of making something happen if he got the ball on time. This was a very, very well designed and well executed pressure package, but honestly, if Brissett had any awareness whatsoever, it would not have been a sack. Maybe it would have only been a 5-yard gain and a punt, but it should not have been a sack. And this was a common theme throughout the day. Out of the Jaguars' 10 total sacks, 5 of them were because Jacoby Brissett being gun-shy and avoiding making difficult throws into tight man coverage, or because of Brissett just straight up holding the ball for too long. It was a really weird mix between being too aggressive sometimes and waiting for throws to develop downfield when he should have just taken the check down, or not being aggressive enough and not trusting himself enough to make those deep tight window throws. To me, Brissett was just lost in this game. He didn't know what to do. The protection wasn't holding up, the play calling wasn't helping him out at all, and I think overall he and the rest of the offense just looked completely unprepared for this game. The Jaguars came in and acted like they owned the place from the word go, and they did. Their game plan, even without Leonard Fournette in the lineup, was spectacular. They knew exactly what they had to do on both sides of the ball, and they did it flawlessly. I love the execution of these Jaguars players, but really that execution all goes back to coaching. On the other side, the Colts' lack of execution all goes back to coaching as well. One team looked like they had a clue what they were doing, and the other didn't. That's how you get a 27-0 blowout. Now, the question for the Jaguars is this. We've seen these dominating victories from them multiple times this season. They absolutely crushed the Texans, the Ravens, the Steelers, and now the Colts too. We've seen them out-prepare, out-coach, and outplay several teams. So why is it that they can't do that every week? How did they get blown out by the Titans and lose to the Jets while simultaneously being good enough to utterly annihilate Houston and Pittsburgh? Perhaps it's as simple as they're just a young, growing team that doesn't know how to win yet. Maybe with each passing blowout victory, they're getting more and more confident in themselves. Maybe we haven't actually seen yet how good this team can really be. Or maybe at some point it'll all come crashing down and Blake Bortles will revert to holding this franchise back. We don't know yet, but what we do know is that Jacksonville is going into their bye week with their next 5 straight games all being against below 500 football teams. It is not out of the realm of possibility that they go into week 14 at 9-3. Would it shock anyone at this point to see them end the season at 11-5 or even 12-4 with a shot at a first-round bye? It wouldn't shock me because at the end of the day, the Jaguars have a running game and they've got a potentially legendary defense. Every 2 years we see that formula go far in the playoffs, and more recently that formula has won 2 Super Bowls for Denver and Seattle. I'm not saying that the Jags are going to go win a ring, but the fact that we're even talking about it speaks volumes to how far this team has come. They went from the laughingstock of the league to laughing their way to blowout victories. There's something very, very special brewing down here in the AFC South, and it's about damn time the rest of the country paid attention to it. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode, brought to you by our friends over at the BetDSI Sportsbook. Right now, if you follow the link to BetDSI and enter promo code FILM25, all film room viewers will get a free $25 wager credit on the house to use on whatever games or whatever bets you choose. It is 100% no cost to you, and any money you win is completely yours to keep. You can do whatever you want with it, including using it to win even more money throughout the season. Even if you're a diehard Jags fan and you really do think they could win the Super Bowl, you can use that free $25 and put it all down on their current 50-1 odds to win it all, which is massive for a team that's on the fast track to the playoffs. And it's free, so there's not even any consequences. If you win, you just get free money. That's the promotion, believe it or not. So check that out at the link in the description below. And of course, I want to thank all of our wonderful Patreon supporters from the past few weeks as well. All of you that have given to this channel and supported me for the past 9 months are what allowed this show to exist. I wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. So again, thank you so much for your generosity and all of your support. I really, really appreciate it. And with that, I hope to be back in a couple days with some more Week 8 picks. I did pretty well in Week 7, so I think we're finally starting to turn this season around. We'll find out soon enough. I'm getting married in about a week and a half, and I'm also in the middle of a move, so my schedule's kind of tight. I hope to be able to get those picks out, but don't be surprised if I don't, because who knew that getting married is kind of complicated? I certainly didn't. So I'll be back soon with more content for you eventually. At the very least, it'll be next week with another Film Room episode. So until then, later.